Welcome everyone to the latest episode of a series I like to call History Speaks. Today I'm excited to introduce a lady who is the founder of the Catherine Parr Society. She's appeared on many podcasts, talking literally about her real passion, a celebration and exploration of the Tudors, and in particular, Catherine Parr, Henry's final wife. So please give a warm welcome to my guest this week, Bonnie Beadle. Hi Bonnie, how are you?
Hi, John. I'm great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm absolutely fantastic. I'm cold because we've had a bit of snow this morning, but I'm doing all right. Now, before we get into the fascinating life of Henry's final wife, I was wondering, because I do ask these silly questions to everybody as well, but it's not really silly. But I was wondering, out of all the on-screen adaptations you've seen over the years, which lady do you think has portrayed Catherine the best? And I guess the most realistic in terms of a performance?
It's hands down, without a doubt, Alicia Vikander in Firebrand. I think she was absolutely amazing. I've talked about this continually for about 2 months. She got her. I thought she was fantastic. I think it's the first time that I've ever thought that Catherine's been in front of me. That's really weird, but yeah, it was definitely her, definitely.
But what did you think about Henry? Because I just weren't. I don't know. There's something about Henry. To me, whether they just got Jude Law to do it just because is a name sort of thing. But for me, they could have got anybody to do that because I just didn't rate his performance. I agree with you about. What's her name? Alicia, isn't it? I agree with you about her. I think her performance is really good, but she obviously is the star of the show.
Yeah.
But Henry, it's Jude Law. It's just grumping and moaning.
Well, I think he was really, really good as well. I think that both of them worked really well together, and I think that he was a good casting because obviously he's a fantastic actor. Actually, I think this might be the best thing I've ever seen in him. As you can tell, I'm a real pro Firebrand. But I think the fact that they sort of made him look old, but he looked handsome. His eyes, so you could, obviously Henry VIII was really handsome when he was younger. You could sort of see that. And at that time, he was not very nice. I think it was a really close depiction of what he would have been like, self-medicating with alcohol, his leg smell. I actually interviewed one of the a cast member in Dry Cell who played one of my favorite people in history, Anthony Denny, and he said that because Jude Law did the spray, made a perfume that smelled like rotting flesh, and he said he'll never forget the smell of it. So I think that Jude Law really sort of worked hard to really encompass this kind of gigantic, disgusting, scary person. But I thought it was fantastic. I think that film was very indie, as in the sense of it was like very real. There wasn't like loads of things going on. It was just very like honed in, and I loved it.
It's very claustrophobic. That's the way I put it. It really is. It's because it's like all done. It's like a single scene actually all the way through, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you really think of it like that, it is, and it's very dark.
Very dark. And I think actually it was quite nice that I think it is just about Catherine as well. And I think that I like the fact that it was, everyone was sort of a bit part. So it was like, obviously you can see it was more real. Like, it was just, I love that little Elizabeth was there, but she wasn't the main focus, but you could see, it was literally like just looking in, like a fly on a wall being in the Tudor court.
And I guess for anybody who's not seen it, we won't mention what happens at the end because it's a bit of a surprise, so we don't want to spoil it.
It's a shocker. Just make sure you know that it's its own version.
Yeah, it's definitely its own version. It's amazing. Anyway, let's move on. So, how did you first become interested in history, and what's your background?
So, well, basically my father, he had a library of 22,000 books. So I have always been immersed in facts, and I don't think I was very good at school. Like I didn't really enjoy it, but I always enjoyed history. But my dad sort of kind of taught me about sort of, he would take me around London and he'd show me really interesting places. And like, he was a bit of he liked oddities. So he would perhaps show me something that people wouldn't know, like the actual window where Charles II walked out of. And, you know, he took me to St. Paul's Cathedral, which is probably one of my favorite places in the country, in the world probably. But it was him really. And this sort of thirst for knowledge and facts. And I don't know, it's just, I think it's definitely ingrained within me. It's in my blood to want to learn and to writing and reading. But I like to pay homage to my father. So I'd say through him, and then just as I've grown up, I've just, you know, made my own, sort of taught myself, bought books. I think Anne Boleyn, obviously, I think I started liking her first, as well as Richard III. I'm like looking at all my books here, reminding myself of sort of my way in. And then just slowly, just, you know, slowly working my way through that time, and then just sort of honing in on Tudor times, honing in on the women. And then Catherine, she just there.
Well, you've been on quite a journey, haven't you? And apart from owning the British Library, which it sounds like you do.
No, I wouldn't want to own the British Library because I'd give it back, but yeah.
Okay, well, it's clear that your passion has led you to some fascinating areas of research. Speaking of which, one figure who stands out in your work is, of course, Catherine Parr, a lady who we know you hold a deep passion for. So with her being your kind of area of expertise, what first drew you to her?
Again, I can't really pinpoint anything. There's a couple of things I can think of. One of them is that there is a portrait of her. I've said this so much, and she looks like my niece. My poor niece is like, but she kind of has a face that I sort of recognize. And then I think I did watch Becoming Elizabeth, and I didn't really like the portrayal of her, but I found it really fascinating that I didn't really know about her with Elizabeth so much. And then it was just, I don't know, it's just really weird. There's something about her that I just find so fascinating. And then I read Dr. Elizabeth Norton's book first, and I just found her life. I'm like, oh my goodness, no one talks about her, and she wrote all these books, and she's smart, and she survived a horrific marriage, but then also she was like married 4 times, and like I think she's just a really interesting, fascinating woman. She's also like loves fashion, she loved art, like some of the stories about her sort of pioneering female artists in the court, you know, the first 3 miniature artists. There's a lot to her, and she just has, I don't know. She's just caught me, and I just find her absolutely fascinating. And more research I do, the more incredible this woman is, and the more I just want her story to be told, and I want to be the one sharing it, I think.
She's a captivating person. And understanding what first drew you to her gives us a glimpse, I guess, into her significance. Now, considering her impressive education and linguistic skills as 2 other things that she's known for, it does raise the question of who do you think influenced her the most? And do you think that the inspiration came from her mother, Maud?
Well, her mum, Maud, is a really, really, actually very incredible woman. So Catherine's father died when she was young, and Maud took over, and she never remarried. And she basically was, and unless she was a scholar, she just was so smart. She could do everything. So she didn't remarry. She looked after all the finances. She looked after the children's weddings. She was a really, like, I say she's quite a modern woman, but she's like, in our eyes, she's like really like forward. But she just was super smart. And obviously Maud was she was a lady in waiting for Catherine of Aragon, which I love. This is something that I love, the sort of how everything is connected. So Thomas and Maud Parr were both at court, but obviously Maud was Catherine of Aragon's lady in waiting. And I think that at that point, Catherine would have Catherine, sorry, Maud would have seen at that point of time, Thomas More was at court, and he believed that girls should be educated, like should have equal education, which is fantastic. And so Maud, obviously, when she's seeing this, and it's fashionable, she is taking Thomas More's sort of way of education and she's putting that to work with her children. And yeah, she definitely, not only did she influence Catherine with education, but there's sort of a downside to it. And I think because Maud was so, she kind of did what she wanted. She not did what she wanted. She didn't get remarried. And I think in later life, Catherine had such a strong woman as an influence that actually sometimes Catherine overstood the mark, because she was so used to just a woman being able to just didn't have to get married, and she just sort of spoke her mind. And I think that yes, she was influenced by Maud in a great way, but also there's like a negative side. Not in our eyes. I'm like, yeah, go girl, you speak your mind. You know, she was, you know, I think she probably scared a few people, but in those times to have a woman that was had her own mind and was really, not that women didn't have their own mind, but had their own mind and was able to express it without worry. I think there's like two sides to it. But I just think like there's, she just really looked after them, and all three of them, William and Anne, and she was an incredible woman. But the fact that she just sort of didn't get remarried, she took over the household, she looked after them, and yeah, so I think that was something that obviously Catherine took throughout her entire life. There is actually a really funny quote I was going to say. We don't know if this was actually said, but I thought I'd say this quote that apparently Catherine said to her mum one day. She said that her hands, when she was sitting in the classroom, she had a classroom at my house. She said that her hands were ordained for scepters, and there was no need for needle and thread. And if Catherine said that at a really young age, I think that shows sort of my thing about sort of Maud being very forward and Catherine being like,
she probably had a poster of Henry up in a bedroom or something like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just say that.
Yeah.
He'll do for me. It's a bit like
I don't know. She did not want to marry him. I didn't.
No,
I think it would be Thomas Seymour up on her wall.
You can't blame her for that, can you? Really? So again, we know that she was fluent in multiple languages and certainly had a strong influence from her upbringing. Beyond her education, there's also debate about her connections within the royal circle. So do you think Catherine was in Mary's royal household, something that even today many historians have disputed?
Well, I think the connection with the royal household is going to be through her mum and her dad, because they were both, like, her dad was actually quite high up in the court with Henry VIII. I think he was controller to the king at one point. I don't really know what that means, but it sounds a bit important. So when I've talked about this before, I've kind of gone with the fact that she did go to Mary's household, but I'm pretty sure she didn't. Like there's like household inventories where there's things ordered, which is a very small thing that people are sort of using as a way of bringing Catherine to court. But I think that people don't understand that Catherine, like her family were at court, her brother, like her sister was also a lady in waiting to all the queens. So they were already in there. And also she had like a really good, like her family went, like they were knights and they went all the way back to Edward III. I think it was. So she had a very good connection. I think possibly, was it the Tudors, that program, which I haven't seen?
You've never seen the Tudors?
No, I can't.
You can.
I just can't.
I put it all on DVD.
I put it on the other day and I just turned it off.
Well, you've got to watch it.
I find it really cringy. I'm so sorry, everyone. It's too cringy. I can't.
It is, I mean, to be fair.
Is it like Jodie Richardson?
It is made for just purely entertainment purposes, isn't it?
I wasn't even entertained. I was bored.
There are some entertaining bits in it. It's just that, I know what you're saying.
You know what? I'm fickle and I'll be like, I'm going to be the one that's like, I don't like the Tudors. Give me Firebrand.
Oh, you can have Firebrand.
But I think in that, is Mary there? And then there's the other thing is obviously when she's younger and her mum's in the court, did she hang out with Mary? Which I don't think she did. But, I think that I'd like to say she came in and she was at Mary's house and then Henry VIII was something like, oh, I must go and see my daughter for that thing. And Catherine was there. But I don't think that's how it was. But she was friends with Mary, and she, later in life, Chapuis always comments about how she looks after her. So she did know Mary, but I don't think she was.
No, and I think after Henry died, there was a short period of Edward, and then Mary came to the throne, didn't she? And by that time, probably Catherine would have been quite content with Thomas, I guess. So, if you can call it
content.
And if you can call it content, I don't know.
Oh, it's such a shame.
So that's covering whether she's. I guess we're nowhere nearer the truth, are we? Really, on that one. It's going to be.
But I think she had other connect. I don't think it would be. I don't think she would be going. She was also a lady, Latimer. I think she was already quite high established, and Lord Latimer was. I think he was quite well liked in court, and I think people just don't know her story enough to know that actually she wasn't just this random woman from up north. Her family were from the Knights. The Parr family were Knights. They were they were a gentry family, and her mum was really good friends with Catherine of Aragon, and her sister was in court. There was other ways, like it doesn't, I think. It's the same with Anne Boleyn, like people saying, sort of making out that she was this sort of peasant girl. But none of them were. They all had great connections. But yeah, no, I think
I did see a picture of her once with a flat cap and taking a whippet for a walk. So maybe there's some.
Who?
I'm joking. When you said she's from up north. So let's move on. Speaking of complexities, which we touched on, that she faced, a marriage to Henry raised a significant point, I guess, about the choices available to her. Now, Thomas Seymour, as we know, is a controversial character that she would eventually marry only after becoming Henry's wife. Do you think she could have said no to Henry?
Well, first of all, I think that she wanted to marry Thomas before she wanted to marry Henry, because she was obviously a widow from her second husband. Sorry, I had to count. Lord Latimer. And I think at that time she should have been able to make her choice, and she was in love with Thomas. And then obviously Henry starts he notices her wherever he notices her. I don't think at Mary's house. And he sort of starts gifting there's lavish gifts coming to her. She's a really good contender for queen, in my opinion. She's smart, she's been married, she's very beautiful, I think there's a lot to her that would be a great catch. But he's the king. I don't think she did say no. She said that she'd rather be his mistress. But then you couldn't really say no to a man that's murdered two of his wives, really. But then the other thing is that she was a Protestant, and she was a very devout Protestant, and she was a reformist, and she, at that time, I keep saying this and I'm saying it really wrong. Obviously, religion is so important in life in general now and everything, but in that time it was like if this sort of thing happened, it was God. God was telling her she had to do this. So she believed that she put the love of her life to the side and was like, God is telling me I have to do this. This is my mission. And my mission is going to try and, she believed that she could sort of change his mind on sort of religion, his religious views. But yeah, I mean, if you said no, I just think it wouldn't have been great. But I also think there's something about him picking her. Obviously, with all the other wives, they were sort of put to him in a certain way. I know they've always said that Catherine Howard's family pushed her, and I know that Gareth Russell is very adamant and that she wasn't. But Catherine really was his choice. Like, he really did just pick her. So there has to be something said to that. So, as much as she didn't want to, I feel like he's picking you. She's probably can do some good. But yeah, I feel like the answer to the question is no. She couldn't say She could say no, but I just don't. I think it's not a case of like, oh, I'm going to be queen, I'm going to say yes. It's a case of, oh, I'm going to do good with this. I'm going to do what I can to bring my religion to the front. And she put like, she literally, like, she was in love with Thomas, and she was like, put him aside. She's pretty special, I think. I don't think I could do that. I'd have to run away to the continent, I think.
It's a really strange one, this question, because in my eyes, any woman, especially one of her kind of caliber, if you like, she was so clever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's really strange to understand why she would go down that road. If she had, surely she must have had an option, to say just no thanks. But
I think she did say. I think she was trying to say no, but I just don't. I think
it was just persistent.
More like, but like her family, there's no pressure from the family either, which I think says a lot. Because I think with like Anne Boleyn's family, they really, it's, oh, suddenly your dad's getting this. You're, but with them, they were kind of. I think it was just such a like. I don't think she. I wouldn't say she. I just don't think you could say no. I think she did take time to accept his proposal. It wasn't an instant. Like, she took her time, but she was obviously absolutely terrified. But I think she was trying to make good of a really crappy situation.
So we'll cut that bit out.
Yeah, thank you. I don't swear. But yeah, I think it just too dangerous to say no. And I think she just really believed God was telling her that this was what she had to do. So
it's because I guess like in the early part of his life with Catherine of Aragon, that seemed a settled marriage for life, didn't it? For 20 years. And then all of a sudden he starts to change and his mindset changes and everything. And families were always pushing for power to get into that inner circle of the court.
Yeah.
So when he gets to his age where he's like, near the end, 50, whatever he is, it's like maybe people's thoughts have changed slightly, and families aren't pushing to get in because knowing that once because they've seen what he's done before and knowing what he's done, there's no point trying to push in. So just, keep your back to the wall and, turn a blind eye or whatever.
Yeah.
So maybe that's I don't know.
I think so. And also like, is it Thomas Howard? I think he's like one of the worst people in history. Obviously, he's got Anne Boleyn and poor Catherine Howard. I think it just goes to show that, like, I think that's actually, just cut that bit out. I don't know what I'm talking about.
No, I'm leaving it in.
He's just a dick.
I'm leaving it in. So Catherine's marriage to Henry, you see as one of necessity and duty, which raises another question that I've got. Given those circumstances, one can only imagine the toll it must have taken on her mental well-being. How do you think Catherine's mental state was while she was married to Henry?
Well, I think she entered the marriage in turmoil. Obviously, she wanted to marry Thomas Seymour and she couldn't. So I think it started off pretty bad for her. But I have this sense that Catherine took like a bad situation and just sort of tried to see the good in it. Obviously, she was queen, which is pretty fabulous, but not necessarily the Queen of Henry VIII. Do you know what I mean? There's like it's a bit of a catch-22. I think she was really lucky as well because she has, obviously, as I mentioned, her sister Anne was lady in waiting to all of she was in the ward of Henry during Catherine of Aragon, but she was lady in waiting to all the queens. So she had an insight. So she knew she would have given her. There's just no way that her sister didn't sort of give her tips and tricks of things to do and not to do. So I think she was always in the air of caution. She was, it must have been an incredibly anxious time. I feel like but I feel like as time went on, she may still have been. I'm so sorry, my cat's just walked in. She's got a really loud bell. Sorry, let me just take the bell off her because she's going to run around. Stay. Sorry, hold on. Yeah, good girl. Got it. Should jump around now. Sorry, I'll go back. I don't know what I was saying.
About her sister.
Should I go back to that bit?
Yeah, go back to that bit. Yeah.
So obviously Catherine's sister, as I've mentioned, Anne, was in court, and she was laid in the waiting for to all the other queens, although she was just the ward to Henry VIII during his marriage to Catherine of Aragon. So she would have seen and given Catherine sort of tips and tricks of how to sort of navigate this very dangerous time, making sure. I did a post recently about how Catherine had a black satin nightie. So she obviously was told things to keep the king happy, but that constant, I think as time went on, she would have been less anxious, because obviously what happened later on in 1546 when Catherine decides it's a good idea to talk and discuss religion quite ferociously, I think, to Henry VIII, which is heresy. So she obviously felt a little bit more comfortable. So she was putting herself at a risk. And then I think she was anxious, and then I think she sort of calmed down and sort of, by all accounts, she was a really gracious queen. Like, people really liked her. Diplomats really liked her. She obviously was a great influence over Elizabeth and Edward, and she was friends with Mary. So I do believe in fate, and I do think she was meant to be put as queen, because I think she navigated her way, and she was very queenly. So I think she obviously started sort of, they were, married for what, 3.5 years. It's not a long time, but she obviously, she did. It's long enough. Yeah. And then, I think then in 1546, everything just absolutely goes to pot, and she's really close to being executed. And it's the sort of that quote of that Henry apparently said, which is what Gardiner used, that basically saying, it's a great day when your wife is sort of telling you what to do. So obviously you can see this, and that's what kind of goes back to my thing about Maud, her mum, being quite like just not having a sort of off switch, and sort of it's not really having such a strong woman in her life. I think it's an amazing thing to have, to be able to speak your mind, but then it's like, oh, actually, no, you shouldn't. So then she's going full circle. She's going back to being complete. I mean, I would say being anxious is probably, I'm sorry, anxious is not even a thing anymore. She's kind of going into, she's going to be killed. So it's complete, I don't know, fight or flight, I don't know, the emotions. And then she kind of settles back down, for maybe a couple of months. And then obviously Henry dies. And then there's relief. I think it would have been a real roller coaster of emotions.
I was just going to say,
why?
I think initially she must have thought she was stuck between a rock and a hard place. Yeah. And a mental state must have been affected. It must have been, to a certain 100%. Extent. But it makes me wonder if her relationships with Henry's children were also part of a kind of strategic effort to protect herself. So do you think Catherine endeared herself to Henry's children to stave off any potential problems with the king? Oh
my gosh, she's gone on her back. No, I don't believe that, actually, because Catherine was a stepmother previously. So she had previous experience of looking after children. So that was Lord Latimer's 2 children, Margaret and Thomas. Oh God, I think his name's Thomas. Cut that bit out. Of Lord Latimer's 2 children, his 2 children. So Margaret and his son. Oh, for God's sake, Bonnie, sorry. So she had previous experience looking after Lord Latimer's children, his son and his daughter. And she actually had, when Lord Latimer did pass away, she was given the wardship of, she was looking after Margaret. And Margaret came to court with her. And Margaret had such a close relationship. And she doted on her. The son was a little bit more difficult. He turned out to be quite a traumatic child and a man. He was ended up in prison. So you can see that she's obviously been trying. She's got a lovely child to look after, and then there's a difficult child. So she's obviously had experience looking after children. And I think that when she's coming into power, obviously these are very different children. These are, kings and queens to be, basically. And well, obviously she brought in. She was really instrumental in bringing Catherine and Mary and Elizabeth back in. So I don't think that was in any way for her to be regent, or like for her to have any power. I think she just genuinely was like, she had a good family upbringing. Like her family were very close. And I think she saw these kids that had no parent, mum, and she was like, I'm going to look after them. And she did. And especially Elizabeth, this is something that I really tried to hit home to people. She really, really loved Elizabeth, and she really influenced her. And she loved Edward too. But one of the things which I loved about what she does with Elizabeth is she helped sort of organize her education. And so there's a lot of talk. There was a debate online about would Anne Boleyn and Catherine Parr get on, and I've said I don't think they particularly may not have got on, but one thing's for sure, Catherine made sure that Anne was sort of brought in. So some of her tutors were people that Anne Boleyn had known, or she read books that Anne Boleyn would have read. So she doted on these children, and obviously, yes. I mean, I feel like it's funny because it makes her sound really sly. I think being like she did it to make sure that she was in favour with the king, but I just don't think, if you look at how Anne Boleyn treated Mary, like it's not necessary. But I think she just generally was. I think she was only young as well. She's only 30, 31, and like Mary's pretty much the same age. And I think she was really, really lonely, and having these children come, into her life, and that's something that she thrives up. Obviously, she didn't even get the opportunity to be a mother herself. She died giving birth. But she was really instrumental in improving relationships. She, instrumental in making sure that Mary and Elizabeth were brought back into the line of succession. And I don't care what anyone says, she definitely was. And I think, that's something in Firebrand that I really liked, how she just, I don't know. She's a warm woman. She was warm. She's passionate. She was kind, and then obviously she was regent, which we'll go into, I think. And, she was regent. And so at that point, these girls, these women are seeing a woman in charge, and I think it was really influential on them. And I think without her being so kind and influential on them, they'd be probably quite ferocious, I think, because she would be a bit calmer. So no, the answer is no. I don't think I think she just was genuinely, I think she was a really, really genuinely very warm woman. She definitely had a temper, but I think, no, it was just, I think, why these kids had no parents. The trauma that these kids have gone through, there needs to be some sort of I think something needs to be done on that.
And I think that's right. And I think her efforts to build kind of positive relationships with the children, it certainly shows the careful navigation of the Tudor court, because obviously, what could have happened. I mean, luckily it didn't happen. She was, so she must have been looked upon as a really a good mother, because she was a mother, really, wasn't she? In so many ways. But beyond the politics of her marriages, and you can't help wonder about her personal feelings. And we all know she was married 4 times, and I think I know which one you're going to say. But out of all the 4 husbands, which one do you think she thought was a true love?
So, without a doubt, her feelings will be Thomas Seymour, because, well, she was in love with him. She picked him. He was a dish. He was
not by his pictures.
Pardon?
Not by his pictures.
I think he's gorgeous.
Oh dear!
I think he's definitely cool. Oh, you definitely can. He was a catch. but obviously he had, he was a bit too ambitious for his own liking. I've got a list of sort of my points. Obviously, Henry, I don't think she was the love of her life. I think that I think there was an element of love with him, not love, but like, I think that she probably would have respected him. There must have been something there between them, because we don't know what went on behind closed doors, but I think he did really like her, and I think that she had, I guess, a respect. I would personally say the first marriage, just no. She was very unhappy and he was very young, and no. But I think Lord Latimer could be a good contender. Yes, he was a lot older than her, but she was with him for maybe 9, 10, was it 9 years, 10 years, a long time.
Yeah.
And, apart from being held hostage during Pilgrim of Grace, I think he's a good contender. Like when he was dying, when she was dying, she was very upset. She had a sort of a prayer. I think it's a prayer for him with his name, with his inscription on it. And she kept it with her for the rest of her life. So, there's saying something there. And I think he, from all accounts, from what I've read, he was very kind to her. He was old. He was a lot older, which age doesn't really matter. But I think actually that's one thing that I have seen in the Tudors is that relationship. And I think actually it's really well portrayed, because I think he protected her from, she was young and it is inevitable. He probably was going to die before her. So, he looked after her. But I would say he was a good contender for being, I think the love of her life was Thomas, but I think that Catherine Parr had a lot of love and respect for Lord Latimer. But like the first marriage, no, that's a shame.
It is difficult. I don't know. It's a bit of an unfair question. Because
it's unfair because people are so dismissive of Thomas Seymour, and yes, he wasn't particularly great, but I think there's a lot more to him that needs to be addressed. And it's a shame because she gets caught up in the whole Elizabeth scandal with him, which really annoys me. That makes me not like him. And it's nothing to do with her, really nothing to do with her. So I would like to say Lord Latimer, but, if I'm putting my Catherine hand, it was Thomas.
I think how it's portrayed though in sort of becoming Elizabeth, it does put a black mark against the name, that scene with Elizabeth and Thomas.
Yeah, well, this is a really long thing, but I'm not sure about Kat Astley, and I'm not sure about her accounts. So, because I've been reading a lot about it. Actually, my friend from the Tudor Dynasty podcast, she's been talking to me. She talked to me about it. But Kat Astley, at first, apparently she had a big crush on him, and apparently she was the one that was really pushing her, talking about marriage to Thomas Seymour. I'm not sure about that. And then the whole thing of this holding her down thing. Listen, if someone comes at you with a sword, you think Catherine Parr's holding her, or is she sort of holding her back to stop her? That's what really annoys me. Catherine Parr was not complicit in this. And the guy was just, he wanted to, he was ambitious and he wanted to marry her. And then we have to put our heads on of it not being, it's such a, I could go in a rabbit hole here, but I think there's a lot more to it than, and I'm not saying he's a good guy. He's not a good guy, but it's like, what would you do? It's like, it's her husband, I'm trying to defend Catherine in this situation because I do not believe that she was this sort of how it's been told in that Kat Astley report. And I think that is something that I think it is someone needs to look into it much more because, and also he never got a trial. He just got executed. And I'm not trying to defend him. I'm just trying to defend Catherine, but isn't that weird?
I'm just playing devil's advocate here and trying to get you worked to her friends. I never want to. I try to not talk about it because I try to keep Catherine as apart from it as possible, and it's really difficult to discuss it because you get a lot of some of the comments that I've had. I mean, it's literally
are you like for real? They're like, she was basically just, and it's just terrible. And I think it's a difficult, it's the same with Catherine Howard. It's a really difficult thing to discuss.
Yeah, it is.
Unless you're really invested in reading and learning.
And I would imagine the majority of the comments come from people that have just seen the TV series and have no more background than that.
Yeah. And that's why I didn't really like Becoming Elizabeth. Well, the only thing about Becoming Elizabeth, I say it every episode, is obviously the actor in it is very handsome. So, the fact that Elizabeth might have had a thing for this guy, which is fine. Like, she can fancy someone, but it's the way that she's very that Jessica Rayner plays Catherine, very manipulative, and like, yeah, you just go flirt with her and like, reel her in. Like, that's just not what happened. Like, we know that's not what happened. Whew.
Anyway.
You cut all that out.
Anyway, considering Catherine's experiences with love and marriage, it is fascinating to reflect on the, I guess, personal strength that she must have had. Now, talking of that, her appointment as Regent General during Henry's campaign does speak volumes about her capabilities and the trust that he placed in her. What does that type of position say about her? Well,
obviously, that is an incredible position to be put upon her. Like, wow. The only other person that had the same the regency was Catherine of Aragon. I mean, she was pretty phenomenal. So to follow on from her is pretty amazing. And I think it shows, after our conversation, what we've been talking about, sort of love and how her mental state was, I think it shows Henry really, really, like, he trusted her, although he definitely knew he was coming back. Sadly, I don't believe that he would have left her as regent when he died, but we'll never know. I'm not sure if his will got fiddled with. I don't know. We don't know. I think that it shows that she's a good, amazing leader. She could work. She worked court really well, and she could sit in a council of men. And I think men were probably quite a bit scared of her, which I think led to the thing in 1546, apart from her religion. She had a lot of diplomatic influence. So, like I said earlier, when a lot of the diplomats would come over and they would, you look at her portraiture, like the way she dresses, she engulfs complete queenship. She's England, she shows it. And I think that the diplomats really talked about her. Like, they said how queenly she was. They always mentioned about how she looked after Mary. Like, they really liked her. And I think the fact that Henry would allow her to be around these people sort of, shows a huge amount of respect. And I think on the other side, it's like, I don't think this was Henry's, I don't think he meant to do this, but obviously, as I mentioned, the role model for Mary and Elizabeth to see a woman on the throne, that's a huge deal and influential. So it would be so nice if Henry was like, put her on there. Now you watch her and you see how she deals with it. But obviously, she signed 5 proclamations, which is like an amazing thing. There was obviously no change in religion at that time. She wasn't really allowed to do that. And I think she was obviously, the other side of her, I think she was probably really good in a crisis management. She was like, I think she was very calm. I think this is one thing that you need to take away from Catherine, is that she was super smart. And I think that she, obviously, you can see it when she's about to be executed for heresy. She navigates crisis situations really well. Again, when Henry wants to marry her, she navigates it well, and she's obviously quite calm with how she behaves. And yeah, I just think that sort of overall trust that he had in her. But yeah, I just don't think he would have left her in general. But it's what an incredible thing for her to have, to follow on from someone like Catherine of Aragon as well. Like, she's very cool. And it makes me wonder, would he have ever left any of the other queens in power? I don't know. Probably Jane Seymour, I guess. If
she'd lived. I think it is interesting because we know she wrote books. She was very intellectual. She was very well educated. demeanor must have come across as a woman who she knows what she wants, and she's not afraid to tell people. And maybe Henry saw some kind of insights into that and thought, I'm not going to have a problem while I'm away, because this lady she's going to do it. She's going to do the job that I asked her to do. And she did.
Also, she was not a commoner. That's not the right word. But she, she was, unlike Catherine of Aragon, she didn't come from royalty. I mean, if you go right back in a tree, but so this is she's quite, this is a big thing. Like, she's not Isabella and Ferdinand's daughter. She's the daughter of Maud and Thomas Parr, which I think is an amazing thing as well. Like, it just shows you how I think her life is full of, she traveled, she's gone all around. She's had such an experienced life. And I think it just shows you, like, that, yes, she only lived for probably 35 years, but within that time, she did so much. And she proved that you can, a woman can do these things and, survive.
It's like today, and I mean, you could have a woman. We've had a woman prime minister. There was almost a woman president a few weeks ago, but so it shows, women can do the top jobs. I mean, you get women airline pilots, don't you, and things like that.
Yeah.
So
and also, I think as well, with her being general. And also I do, like, and I will always push this and hit this home. She really influenced Elizabeth and Mary, and I think Mary gets a lot of stick. But Mary was our first queen, and I think the fact, yes, she wouldn't have seen her mum. I don't think she would maybe been too small. I don't know, but they would have taken this, and they, Catherine and Elizabeth loved each other, and I think that shows, like. That's an influence for an amazing queen, two great queens. And so with seeing that time of court when she's in regent, it's obviously done something. And I think she's just such a wonderful woman. And I'm so proud of her. I'm so pleased for her, but I'm so pleased that these amazing women get to see, this carry on.
I'm sure both Mary and Elizabeth were influenced by her. They must have been. And they would have took. I'm not saying that the previous. You've got to say mothers, I guess, even though they weren't really. Yeah. But I'm guessing they would have took a little bit from each one. But because Catherine was the last one, maybe they gained more knowledge through Catherine than the others, because the others, well, they just weren't around that long, were they? So,
but that's the other thing. So Catherine making sure that Elizabeth, Anne Boleyn was mentioned. She did, and also they were both Protestants. They were, I guess Catherine's carrying on Anne's work. Although I'd say Catherine was far more radical. So I think that's another thing is, so it's a group of women nurturing other women, and I think Catherine was nurturing England for a couple of months. And it's such a shame, because I think she would have been really good at that.
I've completed all your questions now, Bonnie, so it's now time to talk about yourself. So where can people find out more information about you, about Catherine Parr, and any other social media sites that you'd like to share?
So I'm on Instagram, is my home. That's my main place. I have just branched out to TikTok. Ooh. I feel a bit lost in TikTok. So and I'm starting to do a bit more reels, a little bit more fun stuff. Obviously, I will keep doing my sort of longer posts. But yeah, just find me on Instagram, and obviously you can always message me, reach out. I'm really happy to talk to you guys, whatever you need to know about Catherine.
And don't forget, everybody, all Bonnie's one link will be in that description box below. So if you want to go and visit her on Instagram, I'm sure she'll be pleased to see you. But Bonnie, thanks for sharing your incredible expertise on Catherine Parr. Your insights have truly brought a story to life, from her personal relationships to a political acumen and everything in between. It's been a fascinating journey through the life of this remarkable Tudor queen, and I know our listeners will have learned a lot today. So thank you again for joining us and giving us such a vivid glimpse into Catherine Parr's world.
Thank you so much, John. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Magic. So, and as always, to everyone who's tuned in today, thank you so much. We've still got some more incredible guests coming on History Speaks. So if you love history and you love History Roadshow, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss any of our historical stories. So until next time, keep exploring the past with us, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.